Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. In my last couple videos, I've not actually shown the military map. The reason why is there hasn't been any significant changes in the front lines going back weeks. We can zoom in on the city of Avdiivka, and the city of Avdiivka continues to hold. But Russia began their winter offensive on October 10th. That was 3 months ago. For 3 months, Russia has been directly assaulting this city, trying to take it. And they're not even in the city of Avdiivka yet. Russia's winter offensive, the goal was to take this town before Putin announced his re-election. The Russian military failed. The goal now is to take this town prior to Putin standing for election in March. So I think the Ukrainians are going to continue to deny Putin this propaganda win. They're going to hold on to Avdiivka for another 2 months. But I'm sure Ukraine's military is already preparing better defense lines somewhere back here. So come March or April, Ukraine's probably going to pull back to better positioning to conserve manpower and conserve resources. But once again, with this map, when you zoom out, how far into the Donetsk Oblast have the Russians pushed in 2 years? And when you get out the ruler and you actually measure how far this is, 12.5 kilometers. 2 years of fighting, hundreds of thousands of casualties, and the Russians have pushed into the Donbass region only 12.5 kilometers. So to start this video, I've got a lot of bad news for Russia. This is a good way to start. Russia reportedly drops bomb on occupied Luhansk Oblast town in an emergency discharge. This is on top of the report last week that the Russian Air Force accidentally bombed one of their own villages in Russia. So while on a combat mission, a Russian military plane dropped a Fab 250 aerial bomb over Rubizhna. This is in the occupied part of Luhansk, and this is being described as an emergency discharge. So Rubizhna is north of the cities of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. Russia's controlled this village or town for a year and a half now. So what exactly happened? Russian planes are quite regularly dropping bombs on unintended targets, and the latest incident comes just days after another jet accidentally bombed a Russian village. In a long-held tradition of using euphemisms to play down embarrassing episodes, the leader of the so-called LPR said, "During the execution of combat missions by an aircraft of the Air and Space Forces of the Russian Federation over the city of Rubizhna, an unscheduled landing of a Fab 250 aviation munitions took place. Russia's reporting no casualties, but they would lie if there were casualties." So what the heck is going on with Russia's Air Force? Either these pilots and these crew members are going crazy and doing this on purpose, or mechanically there's something very wrong where weekly now they're having on-board emergencies that require dropping bombs over populated areas. Pretty weird. According to reports, a Russian colonel, Arman Ospanov, he's the head of the armored service of the Russian Airborne Forces. He went to the occupied territories to boost morale, and he accidentally stepped on a Russian landmine and lost his life. Again. It happened again. Russian air defenses kills 2 Russian paratroopers in latest episode of Friendly Fire. Russian air defense in Rostov mistook its own paratroopers during training for Ukrainian troops and fired on them in panic, killing 2 of them in the latest Friendly Fire incident. This didn't even happen in Ukraine. These were Russian paratroopers practicing outside the city of Rostov-on-Don, and probably some Russian conscripts with an AA gun saw men with parachutes landing nearby and assumed they were enemy forces trying to take the city of Rostov-on-Don. So they opened fire, and Russia is admitting that 2 of their paratroopers were killed in this incident. What the heck is going on with Russia? Russian friendly fire deaths surge because they're scared and they shoot at everything that moves. Alexander Stupin also said there has been an increase in the number of Russian soldiers refusing orders to assault Ukrainian positions because they know that the chance of survival is small. Currently on the battlefield, Russia is not clearing their dead. They're not clearing destroyed armored vehicles. So the next day, when Russia orders the next group of guys to their death, they have to drive over and drive past their fallen comrades, seeing what the Ukrainian military was capable. The previous day, the previous week, the previous month, as the dead on the battlefield keeps piling up. Additionally, Russians are sabotaging their own vehicles during these assaults so they can claim they had a mechanical failure, they had a mechanical breakdown, they had to turn around, or they had to abandon their vehicle because they know they were just sent on a suicide mission. Graphic video: Russian soldiers shoot themselves dead during battle with Ukrainians. Russian POWs previously interviewed by the Kyiv Post said, Russian soldiers are told by their commanders that it's better to kill themselves than to surrender to Ukrainian forces. So this video, unfortunately, I can't link down below to Twitter. Twitter is willing to show a lot of graphic violence from the war zone, but they draw the line at Russian soldiers committing suicide. I've seen probably about 20 of these drone videos the last 2 years, but Twitter always eventually takes them down. So to see videos of Russian soldiers committing suicide on the battlefield, you have to go to Telegram. I'll link this article down below if you want to click the link and see it for yourself. Usually, when I see Russian soldiers shooting themselves, they're doing it because they've been injured. Russian soldiers have no hope of being medically evacuated or properly treated for their wounds, so as soon as they get a leg or an arm shredded up, they basically just give up, and they use their rifle on themselves, or the other thing they do is they put a hand grenade under their chin and then pull the pin. Russia's pretty bleak. And here's the latest video from Dimitri at War Translated. And these are Serbian volunteers in the Russian military. For my non-European audience, reminder, this is where Serbia is. Serbia's always had close ties to Russia, viewing itself as basically like a younger brother. So these were Serbian volunteers, enthusiastic to go support Russia, to fight in Ukraine, and they can't take the working conditions anymore. They filmed this video complaining, and I want to share what these Serbian volunteers are saying about life in the Russian military. When we asked to get anything apart from assault rifles and more ammunition, they said we'll get it once we're in combat. If you fight, you'll get it in combat. Almost all equipment we bought ourselves, from our own money. We don't mind. The dead don't need money, and we all want to survive. And if we are to die, we'd rather die with honor and dignity, not like dogs, or treated worse than convicts. It's important to note in this video, this man is speaking perfect Russian, so he's filming this video trying to get sympathy or attention from the Russian people as brothers in arms, being Serbians. None of us are crackies, alcoholics. We all have traditional values. We all have families and children we want to come back to stay alive and help Russia, the Russian people, and everyone living in Russia. Doesn't matter if you're Chechen or Dagestani. We asked to be moved to the 40318 military unit. We were told that proper officers and men serve in that unit, who will respect and work with us. We agree to all assignments today. We're morally ready. Our physical condition decreases every day, but morale is still strong. We never surrender, like Russians, who also never surrender. So these men put out this pity video hoping to get better treatments. They're being treated like Russian convicts when they're volunteers from Serbia. And it didn't go well. After this video went viral, Russian soldiers showed up to their camp and basically beat them mercilessly. So here is a Serbian coordinator who helps volunteers come from Serbia to Russia in order to get them into the Russian Ministry of Defense. This is what this man has to say. Putin allowed foreigners to come. Several of us Serbs set up acceptance of other Serbs. We invite them, and they come. A base was set up near Moscow. People from the town administration are helping there. Serbs there sign a contract with the Russian MOD. Then they go to Ryazan, and from there to Luhansk. There's now a number of Russians and Serbs there. The unit is called PSO Volk. They were treated poorly, called gypsies. Why did you come here? I'm talking about the command of the 119th Regiment. They didn't treat them like people who came with a good heart to fight, but came to steal and do God knows what. There was an order to go into an assault. The command of the 119th Regiment gave them 2 to 3 magazines of ammunition each, and they were told, go assault now. The commander of the 119th said they can get more resources once they're in combat. This morning, some military police came, unclear if they're from the 119th or whatever. They came, fired in the air. It's dangerous to shoot inside dugouts, but they still did it. They literally beat the fighters with rifle butts, who were unarmed. They literally smashed a few heads, hit them in their mouths. So if you're an international, a Serb or someone from Nepal or even an American who wants to take up Russia on their offer to obtain Russian citizenship in exchange for fighting in the Russian military, then you're at the bottom of the Russian caste system. You're going to be treated, according to these Serbs, like worse than a dog, called names and ridiculed. There is no real camaraderie in the Russian military. Here's a crazy headline. Russian FSB officers arrested for taking $55 million in bribes. This is coming from TASS, Russian state media, but 3 anti-corruption officers in the FSB have been arrested on charges of accepting more than 5 billion rubles in bribes. So that would be suspicious if the people in charge of fighting corruption are cruising around Moscow in a Bugatti while their girlfriend is covered in diamonds, but this is who the Russians really are. I'm sure these guys did something else to offend Putin and the Kremlin, which is why they were arrested, but I mean, everyone in Russia's government takes bribes. That's normal. So that was the bad news for Russia. I now have to talk about bad news for Ukraine. It's not fun to talk about. Ukraine is the victim in this war, but Russia continues these airstrikes. It's been pretty bad since about Christmas time. Russia launched additional missiles and drones last night, killing 4 civilians and injuring another 45. These are the 18 KH-101 and KH-555 cruise missiles, as well as 8 Shahed drones. And this is the outcome. This is the desired result from the Russian military. Every time the air raid sirens go off, Ukrainians can't sleep. They've got to wake up and go downstairs to a bomb shelter, go to the metro stops. This is aggravating, it's traumatizing, it's suffering. It's just pain and suffering of the civilian population, which is why Russia does it. Here's a graphic showing how fast their hypersonic Kinzhal missiles can reach Ukrainian cities once they're launched from a safe distance inside Russia. It only takes 1.7 minutes for a Kinzhal missile to reach Kharkiv, and 3.2 minutes for it to reach Kyiv. 3.2 minutes is not a lot of time for a Patriot air launcher to get a lock and then successfully intercept, but it's still happening. This is bad news. Russia may have started using jet-powered Shahed drones in Ukraine. The Iranian-designed jet-powered Shahed 238 drone would be much faster and harder to shoot down than their prop-powered Shahed 136s. So there's trade-offs. If you're using a jet engine, it's more technical to build, more expensive, but they're harder to intercept with these German Gepard anti-aircraft guns. That's what Ukraine has been relying on mostly to shoot down the prop propeller drones. They're slower and very loud, easy to shoot down, so it takes time, but Russia eventually does learn, and Russia does adapt. This is a sad story. A Ukrainian pilot of a MiG-29 fighter jet, call sign Blue Helmet, died during a combat mission. He was only 23 years old. Here's a quote I want to read, posted by his girlfriend. "You loved your job, your life, your sky, but it played a cruel joke on you. You will forever remain in my heart the best man in the world, and not only in mine." Ukrainian poet Maxim Christoph killed on the front line. Maxim was a participant of the Maidan Revolution back in 2014. He then, shortly after, joined the Ukrainian military. Here's a picture of Maxim with his dog. And as this war carries on, Ukraine continues to lose their best, while Russia continues to lose their worst. And if you've never heard of a Ukrainian poet or writer before, it's because the Russians have been deliberately killing and imprisoning them for hundreds of years. Russia has always been committing cultural genocide on the Ukrainian people in order to Russify them and make them forget their Ukrainian heritage. So let's go back to talking about bad news for Russia. Residents of the Moscow suburb of Klimysk have had no heat for 5 days amid record freezing temperatures. This has kind of been the big story the last week. All of these residents of the Moscow area. We're not talking about Siberia. We're talking about the civilized, advanced part of Russia, where residents have been without heat and electricity for days or weeks in their apartment buildings. Here's a translation from Natalka. This is a video of residents trying to get someone's attention because they've been without heat for days. We warm up with gas stoves, heaters, heated floors, and by all means available. We have a boiler room that constantly stops working. Sometimes it works, others it doesn't. Constantly some excuses, unhappy residents, and even negative comments and chats get blocked. Inside our apartments, it's between 13 and 14 degrees Celsius. We have children and elderly people. Please help us. We are freezing. So these people still have electricity, and it sounds like they're trying to use space heaters to keep warm, but without proper radiators or central ventilation, it's not enough to keep up with the Russian winter. Here's another video, residents of the Moscow region of Elektrostal trying to warm themselves with a fire outside because it's freezing in their apartment building. The city of Elektrostal, east side, we have been living without heating since the beginning of the heating season. In our apartments, we have from 10 to 18 degrees of heat. Our city is freezing. We use all heating devices. It is impossible to stay in the houses. We are freezing, we are freezing, we are freezing. I can't help but remind everyone of this video put out by RT News last year, claiming that it would be the residents of Europe freezing to death in their homes without Russian gas coming in. This video was absurd, claiming that by Christmas this year, residents of Europe would be eating their pet hamsters to survive, living without Russian gas. So I'm genuinely concerned for the pet hamster population of Moscow. There will be videos if it happens. Congress is now back in session, and we might potentially have a breakthrough on military aid for Ukraine. Top GOP negotiator, border deal may land this week. This agreement has to work. Everyone's counting on this actually working. This is a statement from Oklahoma Senator James Lankford. He's a Republican. And I do believe that Republicans in the Senate are genuinely trying to do something to move the needle to get military aid passed for Ukraine. These would be Senators McConnell, Romney, and Lindsey Graham. The problem is the House, being led by Speaker Mike Johnson. Speaker Mike Johnson keeps repeating Kremlin propaganda that there's no clear path to victory for Ukraine and we can't send aid to Ukraine because there's corruption and US tax dollars are being stolen. So there might be some arm twisting, and I hope that Republicans in the Senate, Republican leaders, can meet with Speaker Johnson and convince him to just schedule a vote. He personally doesn't have to vote for it. All he has to do is schedule an up or down vote on whatever this deal to be unveiled this week will be. Let's hope. Let's pray. But if not, there's an election here in the United States in 300 days. And just don't vote for anyone who won't vote for military aid for Ukraine. I'm not being partisan. I'm not telling you to vote for a Republican or a Democrat. Only vote for people, regardless of political party, as long as they support sending military aid to Ukraine. And if you're American and watching this, this is really important. You should do this. Vote in the Republican primary. Doesn't matter if you're an independent, doesn't matter if you're a Democrat. Joe Biden is going to be the nominee for the Democrats, so that primary is pretty much irrelevant. But you can participate in the Republican primary. Here are your options. These are the candidates. Vivek Ramaswamy supports Russia. Nobody really understands what Ron DeSantis is doing. So you can choose between former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie or Ambassador Nikki Haley. Chris Christie has been fantastic in his support for Ukraine. He visited Kyiv and met with President Zelensky back in August. He is a strong supporter of Ukraine. There's also Nikki Haley. She tweeted this yesterday, January 8th. My husband is deployed. The last thing I want is to send American troops to war. Giving weapons to Ukraine is about preventing war. So how this works, I'll put a couple links down below. And if you're American, try and get registered as soon as possible. These are the calendar dates for the Democratic and Republican primary. Don't worry if it's a caucus, you can still participate. You just have to be there at a certain time and place, but for most primaries, you can mail in your ballot and vote early. So this is the schedule, and this is how bizarre American elections are. But there's 3 different kinds of states. There are states with closed primaries, meaning you have to be a registered member of that party to participate. Then there are states where you register for a party, but independents can participate in both or either the Republican or the Democratic primary. And then there are states where they don't care what you call yourself. You can vote in either the Democrat or the Republican primary. You just have to pick one. You can't vote in both. So the purple states, unfortunately, are the closed primary states. You have to be a registered Republican or a registered Democrat. The orange states are the free-for-all ones, where anyone can vote in any primary they want. And then the gold ones or the orange ones, these are the ones where independents can vote in either the Democrat or the Republican primary. So let's do an example. The example we can do is Nevada. I'm a registered voter in the state of Nevada. And unfortunately, Nevada is going to have a caucus on February 8th. And Nevada is a closed primary state. So I would have needed to already be, usually you have to register in advance, a registered Republican in the state of Nevada to participate in their caucus. So it's not going to happen for me. But if you're a random voter in Wisconsin or Ohio or Texas, you can participate in the Republican primary and support a candidate who supports Ukraine. Just an idea for you. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Scholz criticizes the EU for providing insufficient military aid to Ukraine. Olaf Scholz urged EU countries to step up their support. The German Chancellor called the volume of arms deliveries to Kyiv that most EU member states have been planning for this year too small. He urged the allies to increase aid to Ukraine and to make their plans prior to the EU summit on February 1st. Things are in motion, but this is the correct tone from the German Chancellor. It's greatly welcomed. This is huge news, but Romania has been working around the clock. They've got 3,000 workers and hundreds of vehicles building a new highway to connect Romania to the Ukrainian border. With the blockades of the Polish, Slovak, and Hungarian borders, Romania is trying to alleviate the situation by just giving other transit options to get truckers into the EU. Additionally, once this highway is operational, Ukraine can then access Romanian ports to get their exports out. Final clip I have for you is a clip I found of the poet, Maxim Christoph. He gave his life for his nation and will forever remain 33.
Я ходив по посадках та полях із соняхами. Я ховався за ними, був вдячним кожному соняху, і сірів, і зупинявся. Одного разу вони заговорили зі мною. Їхня мова була хриплою і тихою. Казали: «Ха-ха-ха, що ти тут забув? Ти знаєш, що сонце – зрадниця, що вітер ховається в погребі, а хмари тепер непорушні, як воскові фігури в музеї Мадам Тюссо». Я уважно слухав, дивився донизу, бачу мої ноги стебло, проводжу рукою по обличчю, і розсипаються сухі та порожні зернята. Я з вами залишуся, хлопці, запитую соняхів, а ти нікуди й не ходив, відповідають вони. Де мої сни? Де мої сни? Де мої сни? Поглянь, вони ховаються в окопах. Ми повертаємось із завдання, втомлені та порожні. Що вімкнути, запитую. Та ту, що грала в бійцівському клубі, відповідають мені. З вікона все лунає: Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Where is my mind? Де мої сни? Де мої сни? Де мої сни? Перекрикую я, а у відповідь: Тсс, тихіше, хлопчику, тихіше.
That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.